Let's talk a little about therapy. What does therapy mean to you? What's your experiences with therapy?
Well, I'm like a huge therapy advocate. I've been to a bunch of different therapists over the years, and I've actually gotten pretty lucky in liking my therapist on the first try, which I think is one of the things that people are the most scared about when going to find a therapist is like, are we gonna have this chemistry where like you get me, I get you, we vibe, and that's so important. So I've just gotten lucky in a weird way, but I also kind of tolerate a lot. So maybe, I don't know, some of the situations I could have looked over and looked into a bit more to be like, okay, this might not be the best fit, but like it works for now, right? So I started therapy when I was in second grade, like I mentioned, and this was actually before my chronic illness like really even started. This was because I was dealing with mean girls and people bullying in elementary school. Literally, like I was a child, right? And that was something that I don't even know if people really knew what therapy was. Like I would always say, oh, okay, I'm going out to an appointment or I'm going to meet my mom for lunch. Like it was something that I actually had guilt about at first and shame around. Like things were different.
Yeah. Oh, of course, because now mental health in general has become a buzzword. It's become this thing where and it's kind of like a double-edged sword in some kind of ways, because it's amazing that so many more people feel like they can speak out and so many people feel like they're comfortable. You can say, hey, I'm going to therapy and won't get this weird look.
Yeah.
Everyone's kind of like,
everyone's like, yes,
exactly,
therapy.
yes, therapy, yes. There's this big hoorah moment, but then there's also those moments where, hey, maybe it's being overused, or maybe these things are happening, and it's just like, wait a minute, let's keep things in frame. But let's get back to your therapy experience.
Yeah.
How did it feel going to therapy at such a young age? Did you feel like you fully understood what was happening?
No.
No, not at all?
It was just like a friend. It was someone I could talk to, right? That's the whole thing. Go talk to someone, right? And I think that's all it had to be at the time. I was okay. Like I knew it was therapy. My parents knew it was therapy, clearly. They're the ones that put me there in the first place. But it was really a place where I could talk about the stuff and my feelings. It was getting comfortable with the idea of feeling. And I think in the world we live in today, with so much digital connection, we lose that feeling. And that's what's, I think, the difference in going to therapy now is returning to that root of addressing how you feel when somebody says something to you, or when they do something that causes you to react a certain way, right? Another thing about therapy that I loved, which like I mentioned before, I would always hide it. And I would always feel this shame around it. But again, over the past 5-ish years, people have become a lot more comfortable with the concept of therapy, with going to it. I think everybody almost except our boomer parents, right? Because even so, sometimes I'm like, why don't you guys go to therapy? And it's like, oh, we don't want to, or like, we don't need it. We're so strong, mind over matter. And that's the generational difference where I think Gen Z and millennial are like, we actually need this to heal, address our feelings, address our emotions, and then also take that and take implied action, right? Use everything you learn and talk about in therapy and use it in your work. Talk to your friends in different ways, address them, address situations differently, see how you can handle them with like grace, right?
Parents grew up in a world where it wasn't acceptable. Our parents grew up in a world piled with stigma. So that's why they have those reactions, those responses, kind of like, oh, therapy, no way. I remember the first time telling my mom I was going to therapy. She was like, why? You're the smartest, strongest person I know.
Right.
And I'm like, but I need the help.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until Danny took his own life, which is Danny's my best friend, that she realized, wow, there's a moment. And my mom's in the medical field. Like she fully understands, but also thought that, hey, you can push through it. That was a stigma that was always there. So when we're talking about stigmas, what do you feel like your work has done to destigmify and help others in the spaces that you have?
Oh, that is such a great question. And I think, like you just mentioned before, now therapy and mental health advocacy can sometimes be used as a buzzword for clout, right? In the social media industry.
You see it, hashtag mental health.
Yeah, and it's not something that I think anybody should ever criticize, because usually anyone talking about it is being vulnerable in a way. They're opening up. Maybe talking about it online is all they have. Maybe they can't afford therapy. Maybe they've seen an influencer do it and it empowers them to talk about something they otherwise wouldn't, and therefore it causes that ripple effect across communities. So I think that is a really important concept, and I never bash anybody for, talking about mental health in whatever way they're capable of at the time. And I think that's the key thing that a lot of people miss.